try YouTube, which I haven't done before, so if we have any problems, please let me know. I'm not sure if you comment if I'll see it. I hope so. Just write to me on Patreon and I will answer any questions on that as I have that open on here. So thank you for joining me. This is Kazza the cat. Hello. Hi. And she's here and she's celebrating. She has a little bowl of champagne and she's got a little glass. Lovely. So first I'd like to say thank you for joining me. I really appreciate everyone that's signed up and who's been knitting away and who's going to be with me for the project. So it's really exciting that we're going to be knitting the year together. Ella has been amazing and dyed this lovely cat yarn, so you may have got a kit and knitted in that, or maybe you've used something from your stash. Like, however it turns out, I would like to see it. So, hey, it's Kazza. Right, so with your cat, I'm going to pretty much go straight into it because, you know, what was it, a Thursday night? I'm sure we're all busy now. I'm really happy to be here. I love running these going up sessions, and I just hope it's all right. I hope if you can write a comment and I can see it. Again, it's my first time going live on YouTube. I usually do Instagram, so yeah, it's exciting. But yeah, here we go. So you should have your cat pieces now. With this pattern, it's an odd one. It doesn't look like one of my normal patterns because normally they're quite similar with the same, you know, like they're quite same in the width, you know, but this one oh, hi Sheila, hey, yes, I can see messages do work. I don't have to panic now. Make sure that someone's been listening to me waffle on as I normally do. So yeah, with my patterns I would normally, that's the wrong way around. Yeah, with my patterns I would normally write them to look quite similar in width, but this one's very different because you can see this bit here is really thin and this bit's here really thick, and I'll show you some behind the scenes stuff. So with my patterns, I've spent, you know, years trying to make them as easy to knit as possible. I used to have a little bit of intarsia in them, but with the cat, I spent so many different versions of this trying to get it right. And if you think this looks like a border collie, I do. I think we could get a border collie out of this pattern. What do you reckon? So that was one of my initial designs. So I've been trying to work out a way to get the white of the face to be like a cat without having any intarsia colour changing. And I did it, and I knitted so many different versions of this, like ripping it back. Some of them had bodies, some of them didn't. Again, they all started off looking like border collies. I don't know what I've done here, but I've dropped a stitch. Yes, I've got loads of different heads, and eventually I kind of got to the point where it started looking more cat-like. So it's, oh, a husky, yes, I love that idea. So yeah, eventually I got to the point where, you know, it wasn't too big on the white, and then I kind of got to the stage where I could knit one with a body. This one, sadly, if you ask Alicia in the studio, I'm always taking eyes off of things for other things. So I did my initial drafts in just a basic DK, so it works really well in that. And then when Ella's yarn come, I was so excited because she just did such a good job. So if she has dyed them now, so if you would like the kits, I will be listing them maybe tomorrow because I've got to get this, oh gosh, I almost revealed Project 2. I've got to get Project 2 ready to send out. She's sending the yarn. It's due to arrive tomorrow. So that's really, really exciting. Oh, we've had, hello, good evening. Hello, Barry. Right, so here she is, Kazza the cat. So she looks like there's intarsia colour changing, but like I just said, there's no intarsia colour changing, just two very odd shaped bits. Which, you know, now I've worked this out, maybe I can drop all the intarsia colour changing that I do. I have dropped a lot of it, but you know, I just love that I've managed to. I'm just so happy. I just love working out new designs, especially when it's something I haven't done before, because with the body it's a bit more work. So this is something I haven't done before, and I'm happy it's worked out, and I'm happy you're all joining me. Woo! Right, so I'm just grabbing me some wool. So you've got your top and your underpiece, and we're going to start by sewing the body together. So you've got your top, under, or front and back, I guess, which I've called it in this pattern. I'm so used to having, what was it? Top and under, so front and back. And what I recommend sewing up, this is what I'm doing behind the scenes, sorry, is I recommend sewing up in your main colour. Let's just rubbish with my scissors. Sorry about this. Some interesting threading a needle. You are live with Sincerely Louise, and I'm currently attempting to thread a plastic needle with a piece of green yarn, and I've done it. So thank you for watching. So yes, so I recommend sewing up in your main colour. So you're going to start by sewing the cast on edge, which is the very start of the piece, of the front piece, and the cast on edge, which is the top of your back piece. So if you're not sure which ones, like whereabouts they are, this one's quite easy because you've got the white snout, and this one, it's the closest to your green stitch markers, is the top of your piece. And I always take my two pieces and I face them together. Often in my instructions I might go that way, but hey, let's see if we're on a portrait mode tonight, so we'll go from there. So I'm going to start by, to be honest, if you can, I would always leave maybe a cast on piece long enough to sew up with. It can be really annoying because then you've got this long cast on like kind of tail, but if not, for a new piece of M, I'm going to use this horrible green yarn. I'm going to gift this to Pete's mum tomorrow as a birthday present. So this is how confident I am in my sewing skills that I'm going to use this green. So I don't copy that and use a main colour, or if you haven't got the main, a similar grey, but I'm going to use this green. I've said that many times. And I'm going to sew up using horizontal mattress stitch. So I'm going to sew this seam here to that seam there, and I'm going to join them together to start the piece off. So horizontal mattress stitch, which I have gone over if you've been like followed any of my other live videos, is when you're going to go through a stitch horizontally. So you've got your two V's of your stitch along the cast on edge, and you're going to push your sewing needle horizontally just through that and out. And it's a bit tricky at first, but I absolutely love it. So at this point, this is a trick I don't write in my patterns very often because I don't tend to have space in the text, but I would leave a long, I always cut my yarn, if you haven't got the cast on tails, a bit longer, because instead of adding a new piece of yarn when you sew up the other side, you've got this long yarn tail, and it's going to help you sew up so you don't have to add another piece in. So I've got my tail I'm going to work with here, and this piece I'm going to come back to later, and as long as it doesn't get in the way, I would leave a nice long piece. Then I'm going to go over to my other cast on edge, and I'm going to look for the first stitch above the first row that makes a V. So you can see here, that's my V. So you can just come through there for the V, and I'm going to bring my needle and yarn, and I'm going to bring it all the way so these two pieces come together. Now you may wonder if you should pin these at this point, and to be honest, it's such a small cast on edge, I never do. If you wanted, you could tack them and that might help, but this is going to be over, you know, quite quickly. So now I've come through this side on this edge, I'm going to go through the next stitch, the one next to where I first went into. So I first went through that first stitch, I'm going to go into the second stitch through both parts of the V. So you see that the V that makes up the first stitch on the row above the cast on edge. I'm going to push my needle and yarn through there, and then out. And then yes, you've got it. I'm going to repeat that on the second side. So I'm going to go through like that, and it's really nice. I think I need to do another video on this because it's, when I learned it, I found it quite tricky. So my goal for the year is to have enough time to make maybe more instructional videos that you can just watch. But going live is just a bit easier because I can set aside a few hours and I don't have to watch myself back. But apologies. There you go, sorry. I've repeated that again. I'm racing ahead because I just love doing this so much. So I've gone into the next stitch above there. So I've gone through the V and then back up here and through the V. And I'm going to go do that one more, or maybe twice more, once more. The next stitch I'm going through that V there. And then once more through the next V. And I think they can always feel a bit tight because it is your first row after the cast on. And then, you know, if you really want, you can go through half a V at the end, because no one is really gonna, you can do, sometimes I do, just through a little half just to secure it. And then this is one of the best parts, well, I always say this with these videos, the most important thing is to hold on to your piece that you left behind, because when you pull it's going to move, so you need to hold on to that hold on to your tail that you're using. You're just going to pull it. So just pull it nice and tightly and it will bring the stitches together. So you can see that as I pull it apart, it will come undone again, but we're going to just pull it really, really tightly. You can't, once it's pulled, you can't see that stitching. Where's that green yarn I was using? It disappeared because I'm so good at horizontal mattress stitch. No, I'm joking. Right, so that's your first bit. So that's your horizontal mattress stitch. And you can see I'm pulling it from either side. If you do pull it too tightly, where's it gone? If you do pull it too tightly and it feels really, really tight, you can just use your hands to just loosen it, and that will loosen those stitches. But to be honest, it's enough so you can't see the thread, which when you're sewing up in your regular main colour, it's going to be fine. Next, you're going to lay the cat. So you can see it's now joined here. And I'm just going to move. I've got so many loose ends, I need to weave those in. So I'm going to lay my cat here. And I'm going to tack it or pin it together. Now with this project, sometimes I don't pin them together, but with this project I would say this is very, very important, because with one of my test pieces I tacked, I didn't tack it, and then in slightly different places. So you could either tack it, or maybe I will tack it. Ooh. So let's get my scissors. So yeah, you can pin it, you can tack it, you can do whatever you prefer. I'm going to tack because I cannot find any pins around me. You could even sew this edge together because that will bring those to the right place. So what's important is you want the stitch markers to sit in the same places, essentially. It's really simple because where I've added this bar of colour here, it'd be very simple, you know, easy to like sew it in the wrong place. So I would say just pin or tack your sides together, and even if it's just one side, and then we'll sew up the other. That's fine. Yes, so as I tack, I'll tell you, we're in the middle of moving studios in Sheffield. We haven't gone very far. We have moved across the street from our last one, but we are really excited. So I'm sharing with my friend Sunny, Pete, my boyfriend, who runs a graphic design business, and then we have a few other people in there too. So we've got this nice new creative hub, which we've been tidying up for weeks, and we hope to have some open days soon, and maybe even run some workshops. So it's the place to be. So I'm going to tack just along there. And this side, this is the bit that's important, so is to make sure that the two stitch markers line up. When you place the eyes, you can always move them around a bit. That's what I would suggest. But if you want to try and get this, especially the head, I would say you want to get these as kind of close as possible, because it's going to avoid having it re-sewn. And yeah, like I say, normally I would never tack, and I'm usually quite good at placing the pieces together, but with this project I recommend it just because you want those eyes to match up. So yeah, there you go, tacked along there. So now you can see it's kind of taking shape with my weird ugly tacked orange yarn. And then I'm going to take my piece that I was sewing up with. You've got your extra piece that you've left behind. You could also go from that side, it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to sew down this side of the work using the same piece of M yarn. So it's the same piece of main colour yarn. I'm using my horrible green yarn to sew up. And now we're going to move, like with all my projects, you start with a horizontal mattress stitch and then you go along with a regular mattress stitch. So if you've seen me do this before, here we go again. Regular mattress stitch is my favourite type of sewing up stitch. Like horizontal's okay, but regular is just really nice. Some people call it ladder stitch because it works like a ladder, but essentially you want to pull the first and second stitches apart. So you're pulling 1 and 2, and you're pulling, and you're trying to find the bar between the first and second stitches. On your first couple of like rows from the cast on edge, they could be a bit trickier to find, but you will find them. So you are just pulling them apart, You're finding that bar, and then you're taking your needle and yarn and you're going to go under and out of that bar. So you're pulling your yarn apart. So my first stitch is on the edge here. I've got this little bar and I'm just going to pull the needle under and out. Now with my patterns, or with kind of my instructions, I usually say go 2 bars at a time, but when I start sewing up I always just go 1 bar. So you can see here we're looking for the next bar on the opposite piece of the work to bring it across. And once again I'm going to pull the work apart, and you can see that's my bar there. I'm going to go under and out and one more time. So you can see I'm building and kind of creating that ladder between the 2 pieces to join them together. So you may prefer back stitch, you may want to sew up with a different type of sewing stitch, like however you want to do, but I would always recommend a mattress stitch because it's I don't know, I just love it. So you're finding those bars and you're just going in between the 2 pieces. So you're going looking for your bar, first and second stitch, and then the bar above the previous bar that you'd last sewed into. Right. When you get to that colour change, that can be a bit tricky. So just pull it apart a bit more and go through. And then the best bit of it is just pulling it. So you want to pull the yarn to bring those stitches together. And like with my horizontal mattress stitch, you won't really, and especially sewing up in the right colour, give it a nice pull and you're not going to see that stitching. Do you see there where I've gone? And if I move that bit of tack that was there, you can see now from my cast on edge here, I've sewn along there, and now I'm ready to sew down the rest of the. If you have any questions or anything you'd like to say while I'm sewing up, then please ask away. It'd be lovely to hear from you. Hope you're enjoying it. I will put this as a watch again video, what's it called, catch up, for anyone that does want to watch on repeat, and you can always come back and rewatch it and whiz it forward and see other bits again, or you can, you know, come back later or whiz me along or put me on 2 times speed, whatever you want to do. So there we go. I'm just going to sew all the way down, and be careful of any stitch markers that I've got in the way. So I've got another piece of green yarn there, that's going to be the eye. So now I've just gone on to autopilot. Now instead of going 1 bar at a time that I started with, so just the 1 bar, I'm now going to go to 2 bars at a time. So what that does is it just speeds up the process. So instead of going 1 bar into the work, I'm now going to do 2. And I'm going to mirror that on each side. So along the whole way, I'm going 2 bars at a time, all the way down the work. And trying, so stitch markers. There we go. So once you've kind of reached, I'd say, past the face, you could maybe remove your tacking like I've done, because that's the main bit that I'm quite worried about. I'm just going to keep going all the way along, 2 stitches at a time between those 2 bars, all the way down to the cast off edge. So, and oh, so I've reached the colour change, so like I did earlier, so you can see where it changed from white to from main colour to cream. And instead of changing to cream, which you can do, I chose to keep going in my main colour, which is my green for now. Just because you're not going to see the stitching, like no one, you promise you, you're not going to see a bit of grey stitching between the white, even when I have to really pull that apart to see that change there. So like I said, I'm going to gift this to Pete's mum tomorrow. And oh, be careful as you pull it, because even as I pull it, what you can see here, as I pull my yarn that I'm sewing up with, that one's going. So yeah, be careful not to pull it too tightly, so watch out for that. You can always weave this into the seam to make sure that doesn't happen, if you're worried about pulling it out, if you're going to use that tail again later. So once again, I'm just sewing 2 bars at a time. I've changed back to a little colour change to M in the work there, and now I'm going back to C, and like I said, I'm just happy just sewing it up using my main colour, or green as I'm doing here, just because you are not going to see the stitching. think I always say to people, always tell me that they don't like sewing up, as you know, they say, oh, we're knitters, this is why we don't sew, but I think there's something quite therapeutic about sewing something up and it all coming together. And I always say to people, you should put in as much, maybe not time is the wrong word, but I think care is the right word for anything that you spend all those hours knitting. You should spend that bit of extra care sewing it up and bringing it together. Or you could work in the round, which I don't do, and you don't have to worry about seams, but you do have to worry about the stitches falling off the needles and it curling around each, you know, it's not, I'm not a fan of the round. So I'm going to sew all the way down to that cast off edge, so the cast off edge of the two pieces. I'm just gonna pull that up, so that's the best bit for me, just pulling it all together. If you are pulling it really tightly, like a bit too tightly, and it starts to gather, you can always just pull it back, loosen it up, and kind of choose how tight you want it to be. And then I'm coming around and I'm about to hit my cast off edges, so oh. Sorry about that, a little cough. Right, so I was trying to do that thing where you don't cough and then you end up coughing more than you should be. Right, so I've reached the end of my work here, and sorry, I'm gonna now sew my two cast off edges together. So they're gonna sew there to there, and I'm gonna go back to my horizontal mattress stitch. So once again, I'm going between the bars there, between the V's, sorry, the two V's. I'm matching it with the piece above, and I'm going to repeat that all the way across the piece. I'm going into the two V's on the first stitch, on the first on the stitch on the first row, above the first row, above the last row, because it's the cast off end. You know what I mean by this point. I'm just going to sew all the way, and if I am going a bit fast for you, like if you're sewing along, and obviously I do this kind of like every day I'm sewing up, so if I'm going a bit fast, you can always, you know, keep going as you are, and then you can watch the video and catch up later and follow the steps along there. So just like the cast on edges, I'm bringing these two pieces together by going through the two bars of the V on the first stitch above the cast off edge. I'm finding the next stitch along, I'm going through the two V's there, and I'm repeating that all the way across the cast off edge, and that brings the two pieces together. And for me, I always wait till I get to the end of the piece before I pull it. It's just something I like to do. You can pull it as you go along, but okay, that's pulled up there. So we've got one cap sewn up. Well, we've got the one side of it sewn up. So from where we started at the beginning of the video, I've sewn up the cast on edge, two cast off edges together using horizontal mattress stitch, and then I've come all the way along the side using regular mattress stitch and switching from one bar to two bars, you know, get going. Then I'm sewing the base of it together using a horizontal mattress stitch again, and then I'm going to leave this yarn tail for, I'm not going to need it later. You're not going to need that yarn tail for later. I do apologise if any of these instructions are different to what I've written in. Oh no, this is fine. I've just got it up now just to check. I'm pretty good at remembering. So here I would just weave my yarn tail that I've been using to sew the side just into the seam so it's out of the way. I know I'm known for not always weaving in all my loose ends, so at this point in the pattern I will tell you, you need to come and weave all these loose ends in. So if you turn it inside out, any piece of yarn that's around these edges I would weave in. So, well, I tell you to weave in, I don't weave them in. So, but just for, it is a gift. If it's a gift, maybe I'll weave it in. So, yeah. And then sometimes, you know, sometimes I just tie them together, really. It's like, if you're not going to see them, if it's not going for, you know, being given to a child or anything like that, I think there's always scope to kind of get away with a bit of cheeky. Oh, you won't tell anyone, will you? Cool. So, yeah. So, I'm going to weave in any on this side. Any yarn tails on the other side where I haven't sewn up yet, I wouldn't weave those in until you have a seam, or that's my rule. You know, kind of general rule is I always weave it into a seam. You can do the whole weaving in into the stitches, but I always find that kind of shows a bit, so I'd always move it over to a seam and weave it in. There we go. So we've got our cat now sewn up on one side, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to find my other horrible green yarn tail. I'm going to weave, so not weave in, I'm going to use it to sew up the other side. This is the piece that we left behind when we first started sewing up. Or if you haven't done that, or you've used your cast on tail to sew up, you can use a new piece of M, and I would anchor it into the back like you just saw me. I kind of weave it in a few times just to anchor it so it's not going to go anywhere. So I can do that with this one actually. So just sew into the seam, always, yeah, go into the seam a couple of times, that anchors it in place, and then you don't have to worry about weaving it in later. And also it's going to be in M, your main colour, which is the grey, so you're not going to see it. And I'm just going to pop it just out of stitch, and once again I'm sewing up in mattress stitch, my favourite stitch, and I'm just going to whiz through that really quickly, and I'm going to pull the two pieces apart, the first and the second stitches, and I'm going to go in between that bar. And like with the first piece, I'm just going to go one at a time. So one bar at a time, I'm moving those stitches apart and I'm going one to one. And then as I get more confident, I'm going to go 2 for 2. And once you get really good at mattress stitch, you don't have to always pull those two stitches apart at the beginning. You can just kind of, you just kind of know where they are because they're in line with each other. And you're just going to go all the way down, and I'm just going to sew past the, well, I'm going to go to the, just after the arm markers, because we're going to be sewing those on in a bit. You can remove any tacking or pins as you go. I'm just going to go all the way down. So once again, I'm using your main colour to go down. Oh. So we are, hopefully the yarn is arriving for project 2 tomorrow from Ella. She had a little bit of a nightmare with the first dye batch, and then our suppliers sent her the wrong yarn for the re-dye, so that set us back a few more days. And now she's dyed it. You've seen the pictures on Patreon, and it's hopefully arriving tomorrow, so the kits should be posted either Saturday or Monday. We'll be sending out the project 2 kits, which is really cute. It's a really nice pattern, and it's based on what do you think it could be. It's in February. Maybe we'll give a little teaser for it on Instagram the next few days. Well, not a few days, maybe tomorrow, because unlike this project, which is a live link on Patreon, I'm going to be individually sending out each link for the pattern, just so it's not sitting on the page for eternity. So instead of I've lost my, we're back to the live watching me thread a needle now. It's very cold in Sheffield, so my hands haven't got quite as much dexterity is normal because I don't do very well in the cold. But Alicia got me a hand warmer for Christmas, so I'm very excited to use that. It's pretty much just a battery pack that it charges your phone as well, so it's a battery pack and it gets hot and it keeps your hands, it's like holding a hot stone. It's quite, I find it nice. Our studio is very, very cold, so it isn't everywhere. Who isn't cold? Right, there we go. So I've now sewn up halfway along the body, down past the arms. I've gone a bit further than usual. So there we go. So we've got that ready there. And you can see that they are pretty much in line with each other at the top. Maybe if I just pull it around a little bit, maybe if it's too tight, that might... There you go. So you can see the eyes are pretty much in line with each other. If they're not, you can just pull it a bit to loosen the stitches back, but that's pretty happy. Oh, what was tea? The question. Well, I don't eat tea. That's a drink tea, but for dinner, I had a pizza party with Sani and little Ronnie, who's about almost 4, came round for a bit, and we had a full pizza party with 3 different types of pizza, with Pete was there as well, and two garlic breads. So I'm glad it's I'm glad you can't smell. What have you had for dinner? Let me know. Give me something to waffle on about. There you go. So now I've just placed the eyes. So next up, you're going to take your toy eyes and you're going to find the stitches that you marked for the eyes, and you're going to place those through the center of those stitches. So you're just going to push it through to the back of the work. With this, you don't have to secure them now. If you want to leave them unsecure and leave the markers there, you can do that, because you might find there as a guide, if you want to move them, you can move them 1 stitch over or away. This is where I think they should be, but if you want to change the personality of your cat, you can move them around. Here's Kazza that I've done there. It's really hard to add a marker sewing up, so if you do want to move it just half a stitch over, you may find, I don't know, do I want to do that? Might be going against my own pattern. We'll see. I'm not going to secure them. I'll come back to secure them later. And I say I'm doing it in the pattern next, but I will secure it later. So next up, you've got your little pink nose, which is a triangle that you should have knitted using the yarn for the scarf and hat. And what you're going to do is you're going to knit that, and you're going to place it in the centre of the nose. So there you go. You can see our cat is coming. It starts to look more like a cat now. So we're going to place it over the nose, and we're going to sew in place. The way that you sew it on to know it's the right way is a triangle. There you go. Is that right? As long as it looks like a triangle, it should be fine. There you go. So you got your should have your cast off tail on the left, cast on tail centre bottom, and you're going to pop it on there. But to be honest, it's pretty triangular, so if you put it on a different way, you can do that too. And you're just going to thread the yarn. I'm not going to sew this up using a different colour, as much as I would love to show that so it's super clear. I really don't want to have to unpick it. You know, it's got to be gifted. We're going to see Pete's mum for a birthday, and we're going to the fish and chip shop, and I'm very excited to get Leeds in, what is it, Leeds fish and chips. So to sew the nose on, I'm going to sew just around the edge of it using running stitch, or you could use back stitch if you wanted. I tend to just do a simple running stitch. If you're making it for a child, or I should say, if you're making it for a child, do not add the toy eyes and embroider them using black yarn instead. I, never ever recommend giving young children, or any children, toys with the, teddies or softies with the safety eyes. So there we go. So now we're going down this way, so we're just going to sew all the way along the edge of the triangle. Again, just take your time and enjoy it. Oh, seem to come out of the weird place, but that's fine. Oh no, I've unraveled it. See, it's hardly any. I love sewing up using mattress stitch. That's my love, but I do not like fiddly sewing up at all. I'm not. I like cross stitch, but that's quite. But like structured, but I don't like any freehand stitching. It's kind of not my jam. And my hands just don't work in that way. The same way I don't like small knitting. I think DK is, or maybe sports, the smallest I would go. Although this is big news, well, it's not that big, it's news. I have finally picked up the yarn to make the walrus a real pattern. So you may remember very, very long time ago I knitted a walrus, and now I'm finally ready to make him as a pattern. And I think about calling it a wedding walrus, so I can raise some funds for my wedding that I'm going to do. So hello, I've got a special guest on the chat just talking about me and my wedding and my walrus. So wedding walrus, and I'm just sewing the nose onto the cat. I'm going to go all the way around and just, once you finished it, I would just push the needle and yarn through the centre of the nose and out there. So we've got one nose there, and again you can spend as much time as you want to neaten this up. I think it's looking quite cute. So I've kind of gone for the centre of the cream, just to like kind of at the point where the eye, just under the eyes really, but again you can move it around as much as you'd like. So okay, so that nose is now sewn on, and I will tie those ends together a bit later on when we go to the back of the work. So now we have a little nose. Again, you don't have to do it in pink, you could do it in black, you could use a different colour, it's completely up to you, but I've gone for pink so that it will match its hat. Well, to be honest, the hat and scarf were knitted in pink to match around we went. But now I'm going to use some black yarn, and from the centre of the, at the bottom of the nose, just the point of the nose there, I'm going to take it and I'm going to leave a bit at the end to either tie together or weave in later. I'm going to bring it down to the corner in a diagonal there to give it a little mouth. This is something that I take quite a lot of time doing. Like, I might have to, do I want to redo that? I might come one more stitch up. Again, this is something I sometimes redo a few times. I bring it down like that, and I'm just going to sew a little mouth across to the little diagonal there. Now it's starting to really look like a cat. I'm going to do it one more time. There you go. So yeah, I've got a little cat mouth there. And then, using the same piece of black, I'm not going to weave it in just yet. I'm just going to have it there, and I'm going to sew three little whiskers. That's not a very nice piece of yarn, you can see that. It's amazing, out of a whole, how many meters is on a ball of DK? Like 300 meters. I managed to find the tiniest bit that's not particularly very nice. So I also have left my mouth quite grumpy, so you can, if you want, you can do the old trick of pulling it down like I would with a smile and adding a small stitch in the centre like there to secure them. So from here I'm going to I'm going to come out the other side, trying to avoid that bit of nasty yarn, and I'm just going to sew some whiskers on either side of the eyes. Again, you can kind of do what you want with this bit. I've left it a bit vague in the pattern, so you can make them as long or as wide as you want, however you want them to look. You can play around with it a bit, you can kind of freestyle it. You could add them in, you could use fishing line, you could kind of, get a bit creative with it. But here we go. So, I'm going to go one whisker there. And then I'm going to sew just out there, maybe just under the eye, and then who knows, I can always come back to this later if I really want to. I'm going to do 1, 2 and 3 all quite close together, but leaving a quite small gap just between the 3, and then I'm going to come out the other side there, and I'm going to repeat. So it's looking more cat-like now, I think, once the whiskers are added. I think the problem with this sewing up sessions is that I guess it does take quite a long time to sew up the cat. So any feedback or anything that you've got, would it be better to show it once it's body sewn up? Anything you like? I'll take on board for the next one, because we will be sewing up, almost ruined the project again. We'll be sewing up project 2. Maybe in the office we need to start calling it by its actual name. No, sorry, by the project name and not the name of the creature. So, as you can see, the back of the work's looking really nice. And this is probably why I should have tied these together straight away. But again, Pete's mum, she's not gonna know. She's just gonna think, unless she's watching. I don't think she's watching now. I don't think so. Unless she you know, I hope she's not, because she's ruined her birthday present. But there you go. She's gonna think, oh, such a lovely cat. She's not gonna open it up and look at the monstrosity that is inside of it. There you go. So I'm just tying these together, and at this point I guess I've turned it, oh my gosh, I seem to have caught, that's not good. I'm going to trim this. This is why, there you go, that's not great, is it? Anyway, she's not going to know. Be our secret. Is that going to, the question is it going to unravel or is it not? Or should I just, there you go, a little knot, that's fine. So yeah, so I did catch one of the stitches from here while I was sewing up. So it's always good to make sure you don't do that when sewing up the piece. So next up, as I'm here, the work's turned inside out. I'm going to secure it using washers. I'm just going to find, there it is, my washers for my eyes, which I've got here. And I'm just going to push, I'm going to take my washer and I'm going to secure it on the back by just pushing it over the top of the eye, and I'm going to push it down. 1 and then 2, wait for it to click. Do the same with this one. And if you do put it in the wrong place, you do ruin it. You can kind of get it off after the first click, but after maybe you've done 2 clicks, then you're in trouble and you're using your teeth or some scissors, or you've got to pull the whole eye out and use another one. So here we go. Oh wow, yeah, it's looking really cat-like. I'm quite happy with that. So at this point we're almost pretty much sewn up really. So I'm going to remove the washers, not washers, stitch markers carefully, and I'm going to move on to the ears, which I have left one unsewn. So I've sewn up one, I haven't sewn up the other. Yeah, so that's an ear unsewn, and that's an ear sewn up. I've kind of gone back to I was thinking about this earlier. When I first started writing my patterns, I used this fold method, but it wasn't very, didn't really see it in anyone else's work, so I went back to knitting panels and using like front back panel. But now I'm kind of changing all my patterns to have a fold in them. So instead of knitting all these different panels, you know, I only knit 2 pieces and they all fold together to create things, which I'm quite proud of. So yes, when you finish knitting your ear, you'll have one side that's thin, one side that's thick, but it doesn't matter because we're going to sew it together and it's going to make an ear that looks like this. So once again, if you should have left a long cast off tail, that is, you know, in the instructions. I'm going to be once again sewing up in green. Oh hell, the ear fold, yes. It's transformed knitting pattern, well, my knitting patterns, and you don't have to worry about that tiny cast on seam there. So I'm going to fold this together. It's quite a small piece, so I'm not going to pin. I mean, you could pin one side if you really wanted, but you don't need to with this, because we're going to start with a figure of 8 because it's a new piece of like side there. So I'm going to first of all start by taking my needle and yarn, using my main colour. I'm going to go through the centre of the first stitch on an edge. I'm going to leave a little tail which I can weave in later. I'm going to find my first stitch again, maybe through there. So I've joined them together, and to stop them from moving I'm going to go back into that stitch one more time, and maybe you can even do a 3rd time to create a figure of 1,000,000 and just pull it really tightly. You can see that figure of 8 forming. Kind of see it as I pull them together. It does create, you can see the yarn a bit more than what I normally like, but you will be sewing up using M and not green, so you won't really notice that figure of 8 as much. And then from here I'm going to once again go in from the bar once again up and through the bars, and I'm going straight into the 2 bars because I actually did sew this up, and for the purpose of the video, just before I unraveled it and I pulled it all apart, so I can kind of see where I last went into my bars. And with this one, you need to go to the fold. You're not just going to the white, you're going to the fold, because it gives the illusion of that bit of colour change above the top. So all the way to the top, and then you're going to pull it, and that secures it. Once again, you don't want to pull it too tightly and gather it, you want to pull it so it's nice and, I don't know, nicely sewn up. You can see the stitching only when I pull it apart. And then what you may find with this fold method is, you may find, maybe not with this piece, but some of my other maybe rounded edge pieces, it does create like a little bump here. So what I recommend is just pushing the needle and yarn through the work and then giving it another extra pull, and that kind of gets rid of any extra little bumps on the edges of the fold. And now I'm going to be really lazy because I don't want to add a new piece of yarn, and I'm actually going to run this yarn down the back of the work. I'm going to use it for a figure of 8 on the other side, and I do this for every project, so I'm just going to bring it along the back. I don't have to sew a new piece in, and I'm just going to sew the other side together. I'm going to start with my figure of 8. I'm going to move up the work, and I do have lots of little loose ends. I'm going to go all the way up. So, oh, there you go. Oh, that's so annoying. Okay, so if we've gone all the way up to the top, we're going to pull it nice and tightly. And again, I think sewing this up in M is best. Not, you could use C, but I think M is fine. Or whatever colour I've told you on the cast off edge. I'm going to pull that through the work so you can't see that kind of like little bit that comes out of the top. I'm going to turn it inside out, and then I'm going to weave into, it's gone through that, which I shouldn't have done, right? It's going to just weave into the nearest seam. I don't think she'll notice a bit of green in the ear, do you? Yeah. Trim that down, and then maybe I would weave in the rest of these ends. Not going to do that, I'm just going to leave them. What you can do, you can just, maybe not the green because that is ugly. You're going to stuff them anyway, so you might as well just fold all those ends in, pretend no one knows about them. Josie's not going to know. That's Pete's mum. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of toy stuffing and just stuff the ear. Do you want to stuff the ears? Stuff. Don't stuff the ear. Okay, don't stuff the ear, it says on the pattern. So I am checking, at least you can tell. Like, oh, I'm checking, I'm knocking things over, and I'm checking what I'm doing. Right, next up we're going to sew the ears to the head, and I think that's going to really look like a cat once it gets its ears. And I've added some markers each side to help with that. With, you know, sometimes when I say add things, I tell you not to do it stuffed because you can drag the stuffing through, but on this occasion I would said add the stuffing, so I'm going to add a little bit of stuffing there. And at this point you don't need to worry too much about stuffing it following the shape of it. You can do, but you're just going to come back to do it later. But when I say stuff following the shape of it, it doesn't just mean to add loads and loads of stuffing, you know, just like anything. That's not good. The reason I say shape, you know, stuff following the shape of it is we spent a lot of time shaping the work with the stitches, the increasing and the decreasing. So when you stuff following the shape of it, you're actually looking for the increasing and the decreasing in the pieces. So here I've got some increases here on the little white section on the face. So just push your fingers in and just bring it out a bit more than usual. And for me, I spend a lot of time working on the stuffing, like it's an important piece of it. Again, I've given it these little cheeks here on the side So I'm just bringing the stuffing out where those cheeks are to give it that kind of cat-like look. Because cats are really cheeky. Mine's looking really grumpy actually. Maybe coming back to this mouth later on to there. Oh, now she's happier. Yeah. So here we go. So you can kind of see she's coming together, and when you finished it you can always like use your hands to like shape the piece as well. So I'm going to cut green yarn, everyone's favourite, the secret green that sewed the cat together. So it's really starting to come together now, and you can see, I think you can begin to see if you've overstuffed it if the seams start coming through. So you don't want to stuff it so much around the seams that you can see like those seams, like the stitching of the seams, but maybe that just needs another little pull because it's driving me a bit crazy. There you go. So you can always pull it a bit. So that's cat. She's really starting to, she's looking really cat-like now. So I've threaded my green yarn through the needle. I'm going to place it where that stitch marker is, like the edge of the ear to the edge to the blue stitch marker on the head. So you can put them there, and that's where we're going to be placing the ears. Now, once again, if you feel that the ears need to move a bit, you can always move them up. My stitch markers are there as a guide. So, but ultimately it's your cat, and if you want the ears to be like really close, or I don't know, down here, you can do that. But yeah, I think I'm going to put them there. So the reason I am gifting Pete's mum this cat is because she had to deal with all the cat yarn problems. So first of all, I've anchored my yarn at the edge of the ear. So again, if you've got that main colour like to use, I would move that. I always, for all the ears, I always, instead of going where the cast off tail is, I always anchor it on the side, just go through that cast on or off row a couple of times, just to bring it to the side of the work. And then from the scrap yarn marker, or the yarn marker, whatever you use, I'm going to sew from this point to here. So I'm going to start by going through 2 stitches next to that marker. So the marker's here, I'm going to go 2 stitches, or 2 bars, sorry, 2 bars along from the marker. So marker's here, just above the marker, I'm going to push the needle and yarn through 2 bars. I'm going to bring the yarn through all the way up, and then I'm going to do on the ear, on the first row of stitches, I'm going to go through my first stitch through the 2 V's, so like we would with horizontal mattress stitch. So essentially I'm doing a horizontal mattress stitch on the row above the cast off, or on row, and I'm bringing it through, and then on the head I'm sewing up like using regular mattress stitch, but I'm going through 2 bars there, watching out for that marker. And then even though I've got the colour change here, I can still go through 2 bars, so 1 and 2, even though it's different pieces of the work. And then I'm going to go through 2 bars again on the head. And I'm going to repeat this all the way along the ear and the head. So I'm just going through 2 bars along the ear, and sorry, 2 V's on the ear and 2 bars on the head. 2 V's on the ear and 2 bars on the head. There we go. I'm doing that all the way along to the end of the ear, so the edge of it, which is a little bit of the main colour, and you can see the ears in place there. And then all I'm going to do finally is I'm just going to pull the yarn really, really tight. I've unanchored that, but it's fine. I'm going to pull it really tight, and that's sewed that ear in place along there. So you can see it works really well using that mix of regular and horizontal mattress stitch. I talk about it quite a lot in my patterns, but it's nice to kind of go through it live, and you can see I'm kind of coming up to this seam now where that cat, we joined that together earlier. Now I'm going to turn the work around, and I'm going to repeat that just along the back. So once again I'm going through 2 V's on the ears and 2 bars along the back of the head, and this can be a bit rough. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to always be in line. It's kind of where you feel it, you want it to be, really, because it's at the end of the day it's just the back of the ear. So I'm going all the way down. Okay, so I've sewn all the way down, and then I'm just going to pull that using my mix again, and that was a bit easier that time because I didn't have that colour change on the front. And they're going to bring it, I finally got to where I started, and for the final stitch I like to do like a horizontal to horizontal, and I'm just going to pull that really tightly. And again, you won't see the stitching as much because you'll be using the main colour, and I'm going to push it through to the work. I'm going to weave it in on the loose, so I'm weaving the loose end on into the inside seam. I'm going to remove that marker. But yeah, it should be nice and neat in your main colour. And I might even sew the other one in main colour, so you can, if I got main colour, I can sew it up in grey, so you can see the difference between using the right and the wrong colour. There we go. So this, do you think she'll notice that? Do you think that's alright? There you go, pull it nice and tight and you won't see the stitching. So on the back of the work, you can weave them in, or you could just tie them together nice and tightly. There we go. And I've also got her a candle, which I'm very excited about, because big news, I know I've said big news many times, big news, I'm now into candles. So I now own 5 candles, so it's quite big news. There you go. So now she's got one ear. And you know, earlier when I said don't worry too much about you stuffing on the face at this point, that's because when we sew it up and we turn it inside out loads, it's going to get a bit misshapen, so you don't need to worry too much about that stuffing until the end. You can always come back and redo it later. For my second ear, I'm going to sew up using grey. It's not the exact shade that Ella dyed because I'm waiting for that to come, but I do have a little bit of grey in DK that I can use to sew up that ear, so it's not quite as it's not going to be quite as obvious. So once again, so you see those markers, they look quite far out, don't they, where I put them, but the ears, once you've sewn it in stitch by stitch, then they come quite close together. So this one, where I'm going left to right, I might just pin, I'm going to pin that in place with my sewing needle, my spare one. There you go. So I know where it's going to end. Very professional. The one good thing I say about sewing up in the wrong colour is that if you do go wrong, it's easy to pull it back. There you go. So now that's in the right place. So I've just anchored my yarn at the top here, and then once again I'm going to sew just down the work like I did before, going through 2 bars on there and through 2 V's on the ear. I'm going all the way down, and if you find that you can't find those bars, like I say, you can sew on using a different method. You could just use running stitch or back stitch, or you can kind of just, as long as you're running that needle in and out, you could even use a little bit of horizontal here and there. So I'm just coming all the way down on those ears. I'm hoping that I have enough room from my marker. I'm a bit too high. But like I say, I'm quite rough at sewing up in terms of, like, when it comes to regular mattress stitch and sewing the bodies together, I quite like those to be neat. But when it comes to ears and things, I don't mind a stitch going like kind of array, because it's not really going to make a big difference. So there you go, we've got a little cat there. I'm going to pull the yarn very tight, and there you go. You can't, where's that stitch? You can't really see it, can you? Oh gosh, there you go. So she's coming together nicely. Again, looking a bit strange because I'm pushing and pulling the work as I sew up. And I'm just going to sew the back of the ear in place. I always tend to leave a little gap, a few rows between the 2 seams of ears, just so they get a bit of volume, I'd say. See, look, now I'm sewing really rough. and it really, there you go. So even just doing like a kind of mix of horizontal and regular mattress stitch, put it really tight. There we go. And then I can trim that yarn down, and we now have a sewn up cat. There we go. So she's looking all right. And then finally just going to give her a couple more stitches. There we go. Now that ear is in place, and you know, if you're not happy with it, you can always go back and do it again, or just push that needle and yarn through the work to be tied together later. The same with the back piece. I always tend to just do there we go. Oh yeah, she's definitely, yep, she's coming together. You see that I've got, maybe I went a bit tight on that casting edge, but I am going to give her a hat later, so that will kind of help with that. And now I'm just once again going to take my stuffing and I'm going to readjust the stuffing, I think. So I'm just following the shape of the knit. I'm going to just go in a round circle, and I'm going to give her a little bit more just at the nose, and you can see where I've not pulled that tight enough. I'm going to sort that out in a bit. Okay. So yeah, I think she's looking really, really like a cat now. I think Pete's mum. Oh yeah, I'll tell you why. I'm going to gift her to Pete's mum. Yeah, so she's looking really cat-like, and now I'm going to add her arms, and her arms are the shorter of the two pieces or two limbs. So once you've finished knitting your arms and legs, they're all going to look like this on the needle. So you're going to have one long piece, you're going to have the stitches on the top of the needle, and all you have to do is transfer those stitches onto your little darning needle. And you take the needle and you're just going to thread the stitches from the knitting needle onto your sewing up needle or your darning needle, just one at a time, and that transfers them off. So instead of casting off, I put them on this needle. I'm going to pull the needle through, I'm going to give it a really good tight, kind of pull it tight, and then I'm just going to bring it once through the other side and then once back, a bit like a figure of 8, and that secures the stitches. You pull it nice and tight and it brings them together. So it gives it a rounded finish rather than a cast off finish, which is quite square. And then with all your limbs, so you'll have two, where are all my limbs? 2 long limbs, 2 short limbs. And what you're going to do with those is you're going to sew from the thread through end all the way down to the cast off edge, which I'm not going to do now. I'm going to do that one a bit later. Or should I do it now? It's up to you. How quick can I do it? Well, you're just using regular mattress stitch by this time. You should be experts at, because you've sewn along the cat's body, so it's the same stitch as that, where you're going 2 bars all the way down. With the cat's legs, you may have knitted them a bit differently to me, especially if you're using scrap. You can kind of choose where you want the white patches, or if you've done it from the kit, you kind of need to do it exactly the same way I've done for the yarn amounts, essentially, or you might run out of yarn. But yeah, you could do one in all colours, or I'd love to know what colours you've knitted yours, or you'd like to knit yours in. I'm thinking about doing a neon-y one, or one for a friend in different colours. But it's the scarf. I didn't mind knitting the scarf, but yeah, sometimes it's nice to do a bit of garter stitch, isn't it? But I like the idea of knitting them without the scarves for friends, because that's one less thing to knit. And now I've got this walrus to finish. I'm very excited, and I will have a I can do little birds and what's it called? Siamese cat colour, yes. There you go. So I'm just going all the way down. I think it's just me and you, Alicia, like in the office. But it's okay, because people can watch on catch up, or maybe they've gone to make a cup of tea. Come back once his leg is sewn up. It's fine. Go all the way down. There you go. So if you pull it too tightly, it'll come together like that. So when you do pull your mattress stitch, you can pull it tight to gather it, but not too tightly that it bends. Who are we going to start with? Right. So next we're going to sew on the arm using a mix of a regular and horizontal mattress stitch. Wow, have you heard that before tonight? I'm guessing not. I'm going to start by placing the arm between the 4 stitch markers in yellow, so you can go either side, and you're using the shorter of your 2 limbs. You're going to sew those up like I just did the leg, then you're going to stuff them, and you're going to place them on the cat. With these ones, I would take your seam, so you're sewing up seam, which you can see here, and place them against the body. So you want to go against the body like that, rather than away, just so they're nice and tight, nice and close. So you can turn the cat to the side. If you've got stuffing in the head and it's annoying you, can always bring it away and, you know, go again. Weave in the loose ends, which I haven't done again. And you're gonna, yeah, seam to the side of the cat's body, or towards the cat. There we go. So like that. Put the seam here facing the body. Turn the work, and you're gonna sew the arm in place. I'd go from the top right to the top left marker. Start by anchoring that yarn in place. Again, leave a tail that you can thread into the inside of the body later to weave in. I've just gone through that stitch a couple of times just to anchor it. And then I'm going to start by sewing the top of the arm to the body using horizontal mattress stitch. So I'm going to go through the 2 stitches, V's of the stitch on the body. I'm going to do the same on the top of the arm. So the 2 V's. I'm going to go all the way across. So the next stitch across, I'm looking for those 2 V's, and then the same again on the arm. From the top right to the top left stitch mark. I'm just going across. So you can see it's created these V's in the work. So you can see they almost look like stitches between. And then you're going to pull the yarn really tightly. I'm not sure. That's a bit of thread, sorry. There you go. So I pulled it really tight. Again, not so tight that it gathers the work, but now look at that. Where's the seam? I love when it comes together. So I've gone V to V, body to arm, and created that kind of seam across it there. And next I'm going to sew from the top left to the bottom left stitch marker using the same piece of yarn. You're going to keep going with this. And this one's a bit trickier because you're not going V to V. This time you're going V to bars. So with this one, I'm going to go through 2 bars on the body. So 2 bars like you would regular mattress stitch. And then I'm going to go through the 2 V's on the arm. Like I did on the top, I'm still always doing the V's on the arm, but on the body it's changing to just 2 bars. I know sometimes I use 1 bar when sewing up using mattress stitch, but when sewing limbs or legs or wherever they are to body, you always want to go 2 bars on the body. And then you're not going to get many stitches on that. That's fine. If I've got less than on top, I'm just going to pull it in place, and you can see it's now brought it together. There. So the stitches are going a different way, but that's fine. Finally, you're going to sew from, penultimately, you're going to sew from the bottom markers, 1 to 2, and you're going to once again use the horizontal technique. So you're going to sew through the V's on the body, 2 V's on the body, and then 2 V's. God, that marker. 2 V's. That's so annoying. There you go. Sorry. 2 V's on the arm, and 2 V's on the body, all the way to the other marker, like that. So now you've got your stitches across this. I'm chopping this off, right? I cannot. You are gone. So as long as you don't have to go back and redo it, you can cut off the the marker. Oh, hello! So you're still here sewing along. That's excellent. I'm so happy to hear that. I know. This is our first YouTube live, so it's very exciting. Well, I got no idea how it works, but we're here, it's working, and we're sewing up. Right, so finally, I got this there from earlier, I'm going to use to sew up. Finally, I'm going to sew from this marker to that, the final marker. And once again, I'm doing my mix of 2 bars, and then 2 bars, and then across the V's. I'm doing that all the way across, and there is this seam there, so it might be a bit trickier to sew through than the others, but you can still do it and go all the way up to there. So now I've got my final set of stitches. I'm going to pull that tightly, and I'm going to take my 2 green, oh, it's so annoying, that tiny bit of green stitching that you can see. Oh, she's not going to see that, is she? She won't. No, Pete would notice it. So even though I've sewn that all up in green, there's only one place you can really see the stitching, and that's where I anchored it in place. So the arm is now been sewn up along there. Again, her face is looking needs a bit of the stuffing redone. I'm getting rid of all my markers, and then this bit of green. Maybe I can remove the anchor. Maybe this is something to do. There you go. So if the anchor point is annoying you, or if you've sewn it up in the wrong colour and you want it to disappear, you can always just undo it. I've used just a sewing up needle to do it. So yeah, so now I'm going to just push that through the work just a couple of times. There you go. So that's all sewn up, and then on the back of the work, so you can see I've added my first arm. Again, she's looking a bit strange because she's not got any stuffing in her body. And when you get to this point, when you've sewn it all up, you could tie it together if you wanted. You could always do one tie, or what you could do is be really cheeky, and for that extra bit of security, especially I guess with people who might play with it, you could always move those. You could weave it in properly on the back of that, or you're not going to see it, so you could bring it over to the seam and then sew through it several times just to give it that extra bit of security, or you could do the proper weave in thing, which I don't know how to do. I guess for garments I do it properly, but for teddies or any opportunity to use a seam, that's what I'm going to do. So now she's got one arm. She's now one-armed cat. So I hope the sewing up's going well for you. Maybe you're watching The Apprentice. Like, what time is that on? You're going to watch this after. I will be watching it on catch up. Sorry. Once this is over, I'm packing my bags from a trip to Leeds to give this cat. I'm going to present this cat to Pete's mum. If I haven't mentioned that many times before, the narrative of the whole night is gift cat to Pete's mum. So next up, I'm going to place this arm on the other side between those 4 markers, and I'm going to sew those in place I'm going to use M this time. So I'm going to just rush through this, and I'm just going to sew, because I've got my walrus to finish. I'll pack that for my car knitting, but I have been busy working on, that's what I was going to say, on birds and quadrupeds. So it's the second in the scrap yarn series, and it's taking me ages. I know it's taking me ages, but it's part of the reason is that my iMac has died. RIP iMac. It is a fault with the computer, so I am able to send it back and get another one. So thank you, John Lewis, for accepting my claim. So hopefully I'll be getting a new iMac and I can get the rest of the booklet finished, just because I have a laptop, but I hate doing pattern writing on it because it's too small. So okay, so if you want to follow these, I'm following exactly the same instructions for the second arm as I am the first arm. So if you do want to see those again, I recommend whizzing the video back once it's uploaded, and you can see it. Oh, you just need to keep the rhino. Oh, amazing! So you're working your way through it. Yeah, we're going to try and bring out more patterns this year. Lucy's been busy designing as well. We've got so much in the works, but it's just with the office move and the iMat dying, we are way behind schedule. But we're looking forward to posting more pictures of the office because we finally got it to a point where it's workable. Is that the term? So I've gone all the way around here. I'm just sewing up my final side. Like I say, you can remove those markers if you want. Oh, they're so annoying, but you run the risk as if you do go wrong, then you don't know where it's marked from earlier. I guess you could use the proper stitch markers, would be the other piece of advice. There we go. So that's now sewn in place. So I'm going to push that yarn tail to the back. So yeah, I think sewing up in the right colour always gives better look. There you go. So yeah, she's getting there. She's very, very close to being finished. Very close. So thank you for everyone that's joined me. This has been a long video, and I hope it does upload for people who want to watch it back. Maybe overnight it will. So here is a mistake I have made. You've seen me fiddle around with this a couple of times, and this is where I sewed up using mattress stitch but didn't pull it quite tight enough, so you can see the stitching. Normally sewing up in M it wouldn't be like as noticeable, but as we are gift knitting this for Pete's mum, there's only so much bad sewing up I can get away with. Again, a theme of the night seems to be me not being able to thread sewing up needles. So in this case, I'm going to pull it to the back of the work. Also thinking, if this is another thing I might like to run, it's maybe a knitting SOS, maybe live video where we can take questions on why is my knitting doing this? How do I do this? And we'll try and answer your questions as best as possible, because I think there you go. So what I've done here is I've grabbed that weird bit of tail that I had, I've pushed it into the work, I've cut it in half, and then I've just tied it together really tightly. So as long as she doesn't play with this too much, I mean, Pete's 7-year-old mum, I think she'll be fine. And there we go. So she's getting there. She's so close to being finished, and I'm going to plump up my toy stuffing, and I'm going to continue stuffing her. Now with this one, it's not one that I would open. Some of my ones, like if you're making, I'd say, a cushion or maybe even a head, I always add a bit more stuffing than I should, because over the years, I mean, you can do it for her, over the years it's going to kind of lose its shape. And again, looking at the shape of it, like I said before, stuffing it, I'm going to lose my voice by the end of this. Stuffing it, following the shape of it, I always add a bit extra on that nose section there, just so she looks more cat-like. I think that's the trick, really. And sometimes I go back and add a few stitches here and there if I'm not 100% happy with them. She's getting there. Again, she looks so grumpy. Smile. Again, maybe to give her that smiley look, I would even use a little bit of black cotton and a sewing needle and just sew. You could use the black like you do with a big smile, but if you want it to be neater, I'd just add a bit there. There you go, that makes all the difference. Just a smile. Right. So I've almost finished stuffing her. Gonna stuff. Usually with these I would add the legs and then stuff, and also I've pretend I've weaved in. Pretend that all my ends have been woven in on this side. And with that I'm going to pull that a bit tighter so that matches. And once she's stuffed, so I've spent a fair bit of time stuffing her. Once she's stuffed, and again, once you have finished stuffing her, you know, you've always got a bit of scope to kind of play around with it as well. Once you've stuffed her. Also, I'm going to maybe knit Pete's mum's a different coloured scarf. So if you've got any maybe blue, maybe, I don't know. I've got to make another hat for her as well. Because I don't know. Maybe blue, and then they're not the same. I know I said that twice. Maybe blue, maybe blue, maybe blue. Sorry, everyone. So now I'm just sewing along. Using mattress stitch, I'm sewing up that hole that I made in the body. Just using back to regular mattress stitch, just sewing it up all the way down to that cast off edge. If you want to add any more stuffing, as you you can. You're not going to have any other opportunities to add stuffing, so you're going to sew the legs onto it once it's stuffed. You are not going to sew them and then stuff it like you would do with some of my other animals where I leave a gap, because they go straight onto that cast off edge. Pull that really tight. I'm not going to make the same mistake as last time. Then I had to, I don't know how I'd fix that. So I'm going all the way down to the bottom, and this is always tricky, that last bit of weaving in, isn't it, really, because you don't want to lose. Oh, it's come on through. Okay, back in, sorry. So yeah, as you get to that, and we get to a really good bit, it's like a cliffhanger. Good little thread there. So when you get to the end, I've sewn all the way down here to my cast off edges, and when I weave in these bits, I always just take the yarn, and again it's the same colour as what I'm sewing up in, and I just sew several times into the seam. And also going to be adding the legs here, so if it is a bit bulkier than normal, you can always do the weave in where you're like following the stitch patterns, but I just find it so ugly and that it will come undone anyway. So I just sew as many times as you want to make it secure, in and out several times along the seam, pull it nice and tight, and then trim it down. And I've never had anything unravel from doing it that way. Never. You might see the odd end poking out, but oh my gosh, she's coming to life. 84 minutes of Kazza. There we go. And then finally, we're on, or almost finally, there's still a little bit more. Let's try and get this 90 minutes, do you reckon? Time race. So now you're going to take your legs and you're going to stuff them a little bit, just a little bit of stuffing, just to give them a bit of shape. So, and just, I find if I roll them, it kind of evens out the stuffing. And where's that bit where I said care for things like you would knitting? 95 minutes maybe. Okay. So we've got one leg there ready to go. And the second leg is here. I only should have stuffed the arms earlier. Did I say that? So I'm just stuffing the legs and rolling it to get it. Let's see, that's not even. So there you go. I say if you can see the stuffing between the stitches, which sometimes it is a little bit unavoidable, but if you can see the stuffing between the stitches, it means you've stuffed it too many times. There you go. So stuff the legs and they're ready to sew up. And we're going to be placing them here just at the end of the body. They do have different markings on each leg, so it's completely up to you which way you want to do it. What did original Kazza have? I've not done the same on the arms, so I'm going to mix them around and go that way. And I'm going to use some grey to sew these up, because you've seen the green. You know what I'm going to do. If you want to pop the kettle on and have a decaf coffee or whatever it would be at this time of night, you go for it. So she's ready. I'm gonna thread my yarn. Again, you should have a cast on or off tail long enough. I've used white apparently. That's fine. If you've got a white one, you can use that. Or if you've got a cast on tail, you could use that too. Just going to sew that together there. Trim that down. So now I'm going to start, once again I'm going to anchor my yarn just once, and it's grey so you won't see it like you have been the green. I'm just going to sew the leg to the body, and I think I'm going to use, again this is, I'm going to use horizontal, so you can always see the way the stitches are and the way your work is the best way to see how to sew it up. So if the always on the edges of legs are always horizontal mattress stitch, and on bodies it's always horizontal or a mix of both. So here I'm going through those 2 stitches across there, and then 2 stitches, or 2 V's, sorry, 1 stitch, 2 V's. Sorry for all my missayings of V's and bars tonight. You're just going across, so you're going across 2 stitches on the leg, 2 bars on the leg, I just did it again, and then 2, no, not even, right, start again. You're going through 2 V's on the body, 1 V, 2 bits that make up the V, and then 2 on the leg. And you're repeating that all the way across. And you can pin the legs in place so you have an idea of where you're placing them, but there you go. And then, like with everything else, you're pulling that nice and tightly, being careful. Well, we anchored it in, so it's fine. There we go. So she's really coming together again. Now other leg will be going there. And I think the legs kind of, I guess they make it, because if not, it should just be a cat with a body. Along that side, I'm doing a mix of kind of through the bars and through the V's, just on one edge of it. And then on the back of the work, I'm going to go back into working into the V's. But, you know, if you're not 100% certain on the V's, you can always, like I say, use back stitch, use running stitch and go around it a couple of times. Or if there's another stitch that I'm sure there is, you could, whatever you're most comfortable with, whatever you're happy with doing. Okay. So now she has a leg. Oh. And then I'm going to be really cheeky and I'm going to use the same piece of yarn. I know. Oh my gosh. Any excuse to do a little shortcut, and then okay. And then so I've just pushed that yarn that I have been using, but this leg should have its own piece of yarn to use, but because I didn't have it, I'm just using that. And once again, exactly the same, I'm going through the V's of the stitch on the top and the bottom of the pieces, also the top and along there. So just like I would when sewing cast on and off edges together, using that horizontal. If I pull too tightly, just pull it back. If you pull too tightly, if we pull too tightly, pull it back. And then finally we're just going along the edge, so we're just sewing around the edge of it. Finally the back of the piece. I'm going longer than 90 minutes. It's been a while. Thank you for, if you've dipped in and out, thank you for sticking around. If you're watching on catch up and you're whizzing through, thanks for joining. Oh, that's me destroying. Okay. And final bit in between. I'm just going to now just weave in that loose end by pulling the needle and yarn in and out several times. I might do that later. So there we go. Now she's got legs. She's almost there. She's almost finished. How's the cat? I've got a few ends that I need to sort out, but I'm pretty happy with her. So next up, you'll have, again, I'm still fiddling around with all the like stuffing. So next up you'll have your scarf. So that is just knitting one lovely long piece of garter stitch, and then I've added some tassels to the end of it. So just some little tassels. You don't have to have the tassels, you do it well. I'm actually going to maybe tomorrow in the car, I'm going to knit Pete's because I'm going to gift this to Pete, which I've said many times. I'm going to knit her another scarf so I can keep this one for my Kazza, because I'm quite far behind. I'm a very last minute gift knitter, but I think the scarf, that's where she starts really coming together. Like, there you go, a little scarf. And then finally the hat, which I have knitted already. And with your hat, you're sewing that up exactly the same as the legs, where you start at the thread through end at the top of the hat. You're going all the way down the hat, and then you want to leave an end to sew it up with, I guess. Add a tiny bit of stuffing. You don't need a lot. But so yeah, you sew all the way down using mattress stitch, and that gives you a hat. And I find that bit of stuffing just helps keep its shape, and you're going to pop it on there. Oh my gosh, that changes everything. It's that little moment, you know, those little finishing touch moments, I think, that really help. If you wanted, using some black yarn, you could sew some little claws on. I didn't on this occasion. I don't think she needed it. And then you got a little hat, and then using the pink or the white yarn, I'm using green to just demonstrate, and so I can unpick it later so I can make her own blue hat. You're just going to sew, I would use running stitch at this point, just a little running stitch in and out of the hat and to the head. And again, take time and care with this, especially, you know, as you don't want the hat to fall off, or maybe you want the hat to tiny. How to make the pom-pom before I leave, just because I've had a request for that. So I've sewn all the way around the hat, and then pop that down, and then weave in all those loose ends that you've got left. If you want to adjust the stuffing, you could do it now. But yeah, that is Kazza 2, Kazza's cousin, Kazza. They're both called Kazza because it's a family name. So that is my sewn up one, and this is my original. She's naked because Kazza 2 has stolen her hat and scarf. But here's my original that I made for the design, and here is my one that we've sewn up tonight. Again, still fiddling with her, but yeah, we're going to be gifting that to, if I haven't mentioned that already, we're going to be gifting her to Pete's mum tomorrow. Once I'm going to sort all these ends, going to weave those in because you don't want to see that live. But the final thing I'm going to show you is how to make the pom-pom for her hat. So I need one anyway for tomorrow. You will need some white yarn that I don't have sat in front. You know what? Let's make it in green, everyone's favourite colour. Maybe kind of a little green pom-pom. So to make the tiny pom-pom, you could do it on a pom-pom maker, but I find that I just can make it on my hands really easily. So with a regular pom-pom, if you don't know that trick where you wrap it around your hand, I do have a video for it. That's how I make mine. Maybe I'll make a short Instagram one for that. But to make the tiny pom-pom, I would just wrap that yarn just around my finger, just several times. The more yarn you add, the fluffier the pom-pom's going to be. There you go. Just a little bit. I'm going to trim the yarn. And then using the same yarn colour, but I'm not going to do that. Or if you're worrying about, the best way not to ruin it is to use a different colour. So now we've taken this off, so it looks like this. And then finally we're going to take the yarn, we're going to wrap it around the edge of the pom-pom, all the way, not through the middle, but just around the edge. We're going to pull it tightly. We're going to tie that in a double knot. Just nice and tight. But then it kind of looks like a pom-pom that you would get from when you make it with the cardboard. Then using your scissors, if you've got some really good sharp scissors, not children's scissors, that's the best thing to use. You're going to go all the way around. So this is why the black yarn's helpful, because you won't accidentally snip it. So that's made our teeny tiny pom-pom. Then roll it in your hands just to fluff it up a bit, and again the black's still there so we don't lose it. And then, like a regular pom-pom, I don't have the world's worst scissors. I'm just going to trim that down. look out for any end bits that you haven't, or any loops that you haven't cut. There you go, so I've trimmed that down. I've made my teeny tiny pom-pom just using my hand and some black yarn and scissors. And then finally on the hat, you're going to take the pom-pom and you're going to sew it in place at the top, just like that. So you're going to sew it into the hat and then do that just before you add the hat to the cat. So that's it. That's how you make Kazza the cat. Thank you for watching. Thank you if you've watching on catch up and you've made it this far. You get a sticker and 10 Bitcoin. You don't really. Yeah, thank you for joining, and we'll see you at the next one. We'll be working project 2. They'll be on the way very soon. So from Kazza, thank you very much. We are going to have a glass of champagne now. Thank you for joining me. Yeah, you're welcome to join me for a little drink. We're going to be having that. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you at the next one. Right, thank you very much. Bye.